And tonight we're talking about two films from director Agnes Varda. First movie up, number 73 in the Criterion Collection, Cleo from 5 to 7 from 1962. Here's the letterbox description. For whatever reason, this movie doesn't have a catchy tagline. Um, Agnes Varda eloquently captures Paris in the 60s with this real-time portrait of a singer set adrift in the city as she awaits test results from a biopsy. A chronicle of the minutes of one woman's life. Cleo from 5 to 7 is a spirited mix of vivid verite and melodrama, featuring a score by Michel Legrand and cameos by Jean-Luc Godard and Anna Karina. So, a little background about Agnes Varda. She's still kicking. She was born
What?
May 30th, 1928. She is a film director, born in Belgium, but spent most of her life working in France. Her films, photographs, and art installations focus on documentary realism, feminist issues, and social commentary with a distinct experimental style. Film historians have cited Varda's work as central to the development of the French New Wave film movement. Her uses of location shooting and non-professional actors were unconventional in the context of 1950s French cinema. Because of her literary influences and because her work predates the French New Wave, Varda's films belong more precisely to the Rive Gauche left bank cinema movement, along with Chris Marker, Alain Resnais, Marguerite Duras, Alain Robbe-Garret, and some so-and-so. The group was strongly tied to the Nouveau Roman movement in literature and politically was positioned to the left. Its members would often collaborate with each other. Anyway, Cleo from 5 to 7. I actually just watched this movie like December of last year. I don't remember why I specifically wanted to watch this movie. I think it was like I looked at some stills of it and I read like kind of a description of it, and I think I wanted to like watch some more new wave stuff. Maybe it was after we'd done 400 Blows like a few months earlier. I was like, hey, I want to watch some more of this stuff. And like Agnes Varda was like somebody that like I hadn't seen any of her movies. And so I just thought, hey, it's a Criterion. I'm going to interlibrary loan this. And I watched it, and I honestly think I might have only watched like the first half of it, because watching this for the second time, I was like, oh yeah, I remember this first half. But then like once she leaves her studio and like starts wandering around the city, I didn't like remember anything. Like I was just like, what the fuck? Like, did I actually? I don't think I finished watching this movie, or like I just like did something else while the movie played.
Right.
So anyway, this was a rewatch for me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how I feel about this movie. I don't know. Like
That's a great review, Jarrett.
I don't know. Like
Uh,
I don't know.
do you like it at all, or is it
Yeah,
bad, or
it's
was it fun? Was it?
it's fine. Like I don't know. I'm trying to think what my thoughts on this movie. I think you messaged me mad at me that I watched these movies out of order because
Yeah,
I
you
I
fraud.
watched Vagabond first, and I was like, well, I've already seen Cleo from 5 to 7 months ago, so I broke the order long ago.
Mm,
So yeah, I don't know.
you're fraud.
I'm a fraud.
You want me to talk for a while so you
Go
can form
for
your
it. Yeah,
opinion or something?
I'll respond to you if you want to go talk about this movie and
Uh,
your thoughts.
yeah. So these were both firsts for me.
Yeah.
And I'm not. I don't. I would never say that I am well versed in this new wave French cinema or whatever you call this stuff. Because is that what people call this stuff? This and the Godards and the Breathless and all those
And the Truffaut and
the
that
Truffauts.
jazz. Yep. Go
Yeah,
back and listen to the 400 Blows for a history
yeah.
of the French New Wave.
There you go. So yeah, I'm not. I haven't seen a ton of this stuff, so it's kind of new, somewhat new to me. But I also don't have a huge appreciation for it either. So Cleo from 5 to 7, when it started, I was like, oh yeah, this is super cool. I really like the tarot card opening where you don't see anyone for like 5 minutes. It's just tarot cards and people talking. I was like, nice. I love this. And then it cuts to the people and it's black and white where the tarots were in color. I was like, oh, that's cool. And then she leaves the psychic's place and there's this kind of loop where it like it cuts. it's like filming her going down the stairs and then it like stops and then picks up again. So it's not a consistent like go like stream that you watch. It kind of like cuts back a couple times. I was like, is this what new wave means? I don't know. Like these weird techniques. And I thought,
yeah, there's like that one specific spot, like when she's going down the steps and it kind of goes plays back
it
and
like
forth, and it's synced to the music.
Times. Yeah. So I thought that was really cool, and I was like, all right. I was like, I'm into this movie.
Yep.
And then I watched it more, and then I was kind of just like, I'm bored of this movie. Not, and so it's I kind of understand what you mean. Where you don't really know where you sit, because there are certain aspects of this movie that I thought were really good. And I actually I like the idea for the story, and I think the execution is pretty good. But at the same time, I was never super invested in it, and I was never like, yeah, this movie fucking rules. I was kind of, except at the start, I thought really got me, and then the more it kind of went on, I was like, nah, I don't care that much. I don't know. There was a lot of things I like. There's an awesome scene where there's about 80 kitties, just like kittens, just climbing around and playing, and it's
so many kitties.
It is too sweet. So that's awesome. But then there's also a lot of weird stuff that like I don't understand the meaning of it, and it's like I could have just missed it. I mean, I've said many times before, I would never pretend like I totally understand all the stuff we see, but like I don't really get it. Like there's that time where she crosses the like geek show out in the street, and there's like the guy eating frogs and the guy like putting the bar bit through his bicep, and like it's kind of a long scene. Like I don't feel like it was just in there to have in there. Like I feel like it means something, but like I don't know what that means. Like because there's a scene of a guy eating frogs for like a minute. And I was like, why is this the focus now? Like, what does this have to do with this lady who's like dealing with cancer? Is eating frogs cancer? Maybe, I don't know.
RJ, it's verite.
Yeah. Well, so that was another thing. There's that like little vignette where it's like the movie goes to a silent film for a couple minutes, but it's because they're watching it through something else.
I hated that.
So like that
sucked.
Yeah.
Like that's like complete crap. That's like the worst like reenactment of making a silent film I've seen in like something in a while. I thought like that was like embarrassingly bad, and I was like, yeah, because I like hey being like having gone through art school and like being around video art for years, like I've done my share, and I've seen my share of like faux silent film stuff, and it's cringy. It always makes me like go, nope, it doesn't look right at all. The camera angle's wrong, the lenses are wrong, the frame rate's wrong, and seeing this, I was just like, what? This doesn't need to exist. Why did she do this? Oh,
I didn't even realize it was happening until it was already like a minute in. Because I was watching, I guess I wasn't paying attention, and then like a little bit in, I was like, wait a minute. Is this supposed to be a silent film? What the fuck's going on here? And then it plays out for like 5 minutes, and you're like, I was like, hey. So like that's what I mean. Like there was that little nugget, and then there's like the geek show, and then there's the fruity number where the two like songwriters for her come. And he's like, do you have a white coat around? And it's like an actual lab coat.
Yes.
It's like, why would they have that on a hook at the entrance of their door? Why? But then they like play up this like doctor scene, and like I guess it's supposed to be endearing, but it's not.
Yeah.
And then there's like the song where like she actually like does her singing, and that's fine too. But it's like I don't know. It's hard to relate to her, because I'm going to talk about this in Vagabond too. I don't identify with the characters in this lady's movies, because like for CLEO 5 to 7, she was like her problem was that she didn't want to be famous, I guess, or like she was upset that she was sick, but then everyone's like, oh, she just wants attention, like always. So it seemed like that's kind of just how she was. It was like she's actually dealing with the sickness, but everyone's so used to her like kind of crying out for stuff, and like I don't know, I don't relate to that. Like where it's these people that are in like really good circumstances, but it's like my life's tough. Ugh.
Yes, well, there's like
that's the way it came off for me.
Well, so yeah, with this movie. Like, yeah, like it's kind of like I don't think you're supposed to relate to either character in either movie to a certain degree. It's like expected you're not going to. With Cleo from the Sevens, like there's like her like palatial like studio space where she's got like everything's fluffy and she's got kittens running around and like this like it's just like emptiness and like, oh, here's my mirror and here's my big fluffy bed that men come and bed me on, and here's my exercise equipment where I will just like hold myself up with my arms for like 30 seconds and like that's my workout, and be like, and like while getting her like fur coat thing on and she's just this like arms up and she's like, oh geez, I'm sore, my tummy's sore, and you're like, what did you do? And it's like kind of hilarious that like it's like that's not a workout even in like the 60s, I'm sorry. Like it's so she's like this like little princess kind of character and like really hard done by, and now she's actually being confronted with like a real thing that like grounds everybody. It's like, oh, you contracted cancer. And in 1962, that was probably even more frightening because treatment was like way rougher than it is now, and it still sucks. So there's like that. That's like sort of like the idea.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
There's like the motif of like the ticking of clocks and stuff like that.
Yep.
Like the movie's like obviously there's like it takes place diegetically. It takes place over the course of the time that the movie is from 5 to 7, and everything's kind of broken up into chapters, which is like a really interesting thing that like comes about in like the early like French wave stuff. Like Godard uses chapters a lot, and like just to break down movies into sort of like into this essay kind of form. It's a interesting thing that I kind of like in movies. Wes Anderson still uses it. Lars von Trier does it too in like Nymphomaniac and a bunch of other stuff. It's like this like didactic kind of way of compartmentalizing scenes and stuff like that. And so it's here as well. But yeah, I don't know.
See, that's what I mean. There's certain aspects that I liked a lot, like when it's broken up in the chapters and you get like the title card or like the little text over showing you where the chapters break, and then like the intro I thought was really good. Like it's got really cool aspects, but as a whole, there's nothing that would bring me back to it. Yeah, I'll never watch it. And also, driving in France looks really scary.
Oh God, people walking in Paris is just like people are just like walking out and you're like, oh, is this car going to stop for me? I don't know. Oh, that one's not going to. But I mean, like that's actually like that's like like a lot of the world is like that. You kind of take your life into your own hands because it's not like in our neck of the woods where it's so heavily policed and like like it's ridiculous.
Well, I was a pedestrian in China, man, and there's no such thing as pedestrians over there, is what I learned really quick. You got to watch what you're doing, man.
Yeah.
And you couldn't be doing this shit where you're just kind of like, just kind of like walking out in front of cars, being like, hey, why don't you stop for me? Those motherfuckers will blow you down.
Yeah. So I don't know, RJ, if you've been diagnosed with cancer lately or like getting your results, but you're like, oh, maybe I have cancer. I'm going to go buy a hat.
I kind of get that, I guess, because it's like, I think you could go either two ways. You would either be like,
but the character though too.
Yeah,
like, this is like her, like 'cause she turns on the dime where she's like, oh God, I'm so sad. Oh, I know, let's go get clothes, and then she's like happy doing that. It's an escape thing.
Yeah, it's either you would be completely devastated and you'd be a ball in your room, or you would like fall onto these crutches that would like to escape from it, like going shopping or doing a podcast that no one listens to.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I guess the one thing I picked up on, maybe more so watching it the second time, was the mirror motif of the movie, because there's like a lot of her looking in the mirror and like looking at mirrors like for the first half of the movie. Like
I didn't notice.
Oh, it's like a lot. Like almost like watching, I was like, man, how did I not like remember this? Because it's like pretty constant, which is like kind of like the whole vanity thing too, and just like that aspect of like sort of being a performer, or perhaps being a woman in the spotlight of the world where you're on the focus. There it is. And so there's like that sort of aspect of like keeping up appearances, and like when you're and the appearances of being healthy and the appearances of beauty, blah blah blah. And so and kitties. One thing that I thought of watching this movie too was her like wandering through the streets in the second half of the movie. It reminded me a lot of Carnival of Souls.
Oh yeah, I guess. I
Yeah,
can see that.
and just because it's just like this like blonde protagonist wandering around, and like
Hmm.
particularly the scenes where she's like invisible to people,
Hmm.
and or like she's like just kind of out of time. And there's those scenes too, like where the camera's like sort of mounted atop of buildings or across streets, and you're just watching her walking and walking and walking, and you're kind of actually getting like people just reacting to this woman walking down the street, and like
Hmm.
people are just like looking at her. There's like a couple of shots too of like just like leering men in like enclaves, like and, like they're wearing like the like butler outfits, and they're just like all standing there watching her as she like walks,
Hmm.
and they just like keep following her, and you're like, are those actors or did they just shoot this and they're just there? I hope they're just I hope they're actors.
Yeah.
But
I don't know, man.
I don't know. I think the lead in this looks a lot better without the like
I agree.
hairpiece.
I
Yeah.
thought the same thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it looked odd, especially when she put on her like fur black hat.
Hmm.
She looked a lot more real with her just like regular old
Just her
hair,
natural hair.
her locks.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I thought the same thing, Jared. I was like, she looks better just with her normal hair. Yeah.
Um, that's about all I have to say about it at the moment. Well, I'll save who hates after we talk about Vagabond, I
Sure.
guess.
You want to roll into that bad boy?
Sure, let's tackle that Vagabond. Same director, Agnes. 1985. So we're jumping like a good like 23 years ahead, right into the 80s, which seemed to be like
Yeah,
a
we are.
real kind of like a heyday for French cinema. At least like those movies like getting re-exposure again.
Hmm.
There's this watching this movie reminded me that there's the one P.T. Anderson movie I have to watch still, Betty Blue, which is like kind of like
Oh,
the
yeah.
yeah, which is like the same era and stuff like that.
Yeah, that movie rules.
Yeah. So Vagabond. Here's our synopsis here from Letterboxd. Mona Bergeron is dead, her frozen body found in a ditch in the French countryside. From this,
Hmm.
the film flashes back to the weeks leading up to her death. Through these flashbacks, Mona gradually declines as she travels from place to place, taking odd jobs and staying with whomever will offer her a place to sleep. Mona is fiercely independent, craving freedom over comfort, but it is this desire to be free that will eventually lead to her demise.
Hmm.
So this was a first time view for me. This movie's reputation preceded it. I had heard like this movie's like appeared on lots of like best of lists.
Sure.
It's talked about quite a bit. Like usually there's like always like a big drop of like best of movies when it's like best movies of the 20th century. There's a way less
Hmm.
movies in the 80s, unless it's like your like Steven Spielberg kind of lists where like it's like
Hmm.
the greatest era of all time was Back to the Future, and like it's like oh come on, Vagabond's usually
Star
not on
Wars.
those particular lists. Yeah, Star Wars like that, like the summer blockbuster era was the greatest era of all time, and then there's movies like Vagabond that kind of slip in there too once in a blue moon. So I didn't really know anything about this movie, but this movie opens up and I don't know. I started piecing it together pretty quick what I was in store for.
Yeah.
So the music and like opening shot of this movie, all I was thinking about was, man, this is like There Will Be Blood. Like
Hmm.
it's got this bombastic score, nothing's happening, and it's just like this like anonymous countryside. And like I was like watching it, and I'm like, oh, somebody's like kind of tending to a field, and I was like, oh, this is like that painting, The Gleaners, which was funny because Agnes also Varda also directed a movie called The Gleaners and I,
Hmm.
which is like, oh, that's weird. So anyway, this movie just like starts off this like slow roll of like just like menacing, not quite operatic,
Hmm.
but atmospheric music, and then oh, there's a dead body in a ditch. And that's got to be like one of the most convincing stiffs I've seen in a movie. I think there's one bit where you can clearly see her like inhale, like the
Hmm.
actress on the ground. But for the most part, it's like when they're like lifting her frozen body out of that ditch into a body bag, it's like, whoa, that's she looks pretty frozen.
Hmm.
That's weird. And so yeah, you get this like I don't know, that callous sort of view of like basically what a vagabond's body would be like. It's like, oh, yeah, she's dead. Huh? Looks like she got here on her own. There's nothing wrong here. She wasn't raped. She wasn't murdered. She's just dead. Throw her in a
Hmm.
sack and we'll go cremate that and dump her out in the potter's
In
field.
the river.
So, and then it's like, and then we get the framing device where we have this sort of like
Hmm.
this faceless narrator who's like describing sort of like this following film is like a documentary, kind of following the events that lead to her death. Within about like 10 minutes of this, I was like, oh, so when does the rape happen in this movie? Because it's just like that's the sort of grimy 80s deal that we're in store for. Maybe it's just like years of like watching like Gus Van Sant movies from the same era. Like it's just like, oh yeah, this is gonna be a grim affair.
Yeah.
Then I started thinking about how, if they remade this movie now, it would probably star Selena Gomez or something like that.
Oh God.
And like, I don't know.
Darren Aronofsky would direct it.
No, he wouldn't direct this type of movie. Watch it there. So I think the two words that one could describe this movie is dreary and European.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
Yeah.
Dirty is also a word you could use to describe this movie.
I think that's all packed in there with European. The other thing, watching I don't know if you've watched like very many like Michael Haneke movies, but like
maybe
like he's like Funny Games and White Ribbon and Cachet. No. I don't know if you've watched any of this stuff. No. He's the master of like kind of like dreariness and existentialism, which is a thing that runs through both of these films. Right. And like there's always like this like I don't know. There's whereas I've described like Japanese cinema as being cruel, I find that European stories have this indifference from like the population. Like they're not necessarily cruel, but they kind of be like, what are you doing here? Like, oh, are you okay? Okay, well, if you're okay, I'm moving along. See you later. And then you're just kind of you just keep wandering through that muddy field and moving to your next score, maybe. Yeah. So yeah. I liked Vagabond more than I liked Cleo from 5 to 7. I liked the elliptical style. I think I read like off the Wikipedia page. This movie is basically chopped up into like 47 chapters, essentially, like where it kind of goes back and forth too between like you'll have like you're getting recollections of people that she encountered on the road, and like sometimes you get the recollection after you've already seen the scene of their interaction, or like you get in the middle of it or right before. It's very loose with that chronology, and it's just sort of like this kaleidoscope of this character who she like isn't necessarily the most sympathetic character, which is a bold move to make when you're making movies, because you're asking an audience to spend like an hour and a half, 2 hours to like hang out with her, and like even though she's like making terrible decisions, and like you're like, oh my god, she kind of is bringing this on herself, which I think the movie's on the same page with as well. But I think like the stance that that Varda would be making here is that doesn't mean that the story is any less worth telling, and it's like a unique it's a story too of like, you don't usually get the story of like a female vagabond. Like if you think about like the history of like movies of like sort of like people just stumbling through circumstance, they're comedies, like a Chaplin or something like that. Like you get The Tramp, and it's like, haha, isn't this fun and jokey and like farcical, when in reality it's like, no, it's like it's like a lot of choices that have to be made. I'll continue on with this thought, but I'll let you go on about this movie and what you thought of it, because I think because you already alluded to the fact that you found like the characters like not relatable, or kind of unlikable, or whatever.
Well, see, the thing too is like the characters don't have to be like relatable for me to like it. Like some of my favorite movies, like what we were talking about earlier, like The Fountain. I don't relate to Hugh Jackman. Like I'm not flying around in a fucking space bubble.
That's an extreme, though. That's like,
yeah, I know. That's that's why. Well, that's why I picked it. Yeah, it's because it's an extreme. But my point is, I don't have to relate to them, but I do find like sometimes for movies where the rest of the movie itself doesn't engage me enough, if there's a certain aspect of the characters that I really like, or not even relate or identify with, like, because that doesn't really matter. But if there's something about the character that you can pull away or like a certain aspect of the movie, then I can enjoy it a little bit more. But like so yeah, like I know it was an extreme. But my point is, like, so remember last week when we watched Le Million, and I was like, this guy's just a fucking prick. Like, he's a bum.
Right.
Like, he wouldn't pay his bills, and I was like, I don't feel bad.
But in that movie, I think you're supposed to be, like,
You're supposed to.
I think you're supposed to like that guy. Like, I think you're supposed to like, despite his failings, because he's a comedic character, you're supposed to be kind of like, ha, he's what a scamp.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So you're supposed to, but at the same time, I didn't. And then in this one, uh, like I know what you mean. Like she doesn't really make the character sympathetic at all, so you don't really root for her. But at the same time, I was just annoyed by her because I think the way she lives her life is not something that I understand completely because she's just a bum. And it's like she gets offered all these good stuff. It's like, hey, you can live here. We'll give you, like, you just work. You can have food and you can have shelter. But she's like, nah, I'm about the road and I'm all about freedom and I ain't going to be shackled down by this stuff. And
To paraphrase,
that's like this whole fucking movie is like even other characters directly to her. They're like your life is the road, and it's like you care more about freedom than you do about food. And it's like I feel like it's a little heavy-handed at times. Like when she's with the sheep farmer, that guy literally has those conversations with her. It's like your life is the road, and then it's like you want the freedom. And like I never felt bad for her because it's like she's being offered all this good stuff and she turns it down because she's a bum. She'd rather just like sleep in like an old shack or like in a pile of mud. Like, and she does at certain points. She's sleeping in like old mud piles, and it's like, why put yourself through that? Because you don't want a job? I don't know. Maybe.
Well, no, see, I don't know if that's like the choice though. I mean, that's like the inevitability of living that lifestyle in the world that the society's created, and that's like the only way to like. So there's like no other option. It's like a false choice.
Yeah. But like, you know what I mean? Like she is offered like a bunch of stuff. Like
yes,
even at the sheep farm, it's
right. But they're always like. Right. Well, see, that's why like that's like I think one of the most important scenes in the movie is like with the dropout hippie guy. Like that is like a really key scene because that's like when people talk about bums, they're talking about that guy usually, and like this guy who's like, oh, like I mean, the Southern Albertan mindset around these our neck of the woods is like, oh, if you're not living, you're a bum. Like if you're not working for a living, what else are you doing? Like they cannot fathom another world other than like one that is like based on the capitalist sort of materialist idea of like, yeah, you just like live, you're nice to people, and you go watch the sports game, you go buy some shit, and if you don't do those things, you're weird. And like, and this is like an extreme form of weird. Like like most people that like you or I know or like interact with on a regular basis, there's like no one like Mona in our lives, like because those people are gone. Like they flicker in and out, and they're the people that you do see, like you look and go, oh man, they look like they're living like a shitty lifestyle. I don't like want to be them whatsoever. And like they probably have like shitty attitudes. They probably like they have a chip on their shoulder. They're like, man, if they just settle down. Like it's all like our worst judgments and like whatnot are something that like are captured by that character. And I think this movie like is kind of like, it's what it is it's trying to like create us that character that like confronts us with the fact that like all our values are like the antithesis of what she's doing. And like because like she's presented with these opportunities that like we view them as opportunities, but they're always at the end of the day compromises, because she has to like well, you could do this, but then you have to there's all these other things that you have to trade off with. And it's like when the like, and it's like at the same time, like you or I, like, you know, we both like we pay our rent, we go to work, we pay our bills, we have credit ratings we're worried about, we have like we go to family dinners, we like have to be nice to people all the time, and like there's all these things that like we just do, and like it's like, well, it just makes life easier, and we're good people by definition by that. But when we have this flip side of a character to this, where you're like, okay, this person doesn't give a shit about any of those things, they'd rather like live, like they'd rather freeze to death in a ditch, which is like I don't think anyone actually wants to do that. That they want to be able to do what they want at all times, which is a challenge, because no one, like, we're kind of told from like a fairly early age that that's not what life is. And I'm not sure, it's like sort of like a weird like Protestant thing, even if you're like not religious or whatever, like it's like this work ethic that's instilled with you, like like you have to do this and this to get this, and that's how life is, and you're kind of like, and that's always stressed to you. And I mean, there's like for the most part, like it shows results. It's not like it's like not true. It's just like, well, that seems to be a system that actually does work, because putting this amount of work into something in a system will generate this sort of output. That's not always necessarily 100% the case, but generally it does work, which is why everyone kind of falls into it, and then like it throws their hat into that. So this Vagabond character is like exists in that world that we all like exist in, and like I mean, you're totally like right, like what you're saying is like that is the reaction that like you had. Like when I was watching this movie, I was thinking about your reactions, because I've known you for a while, and I'm like, oh man, I know what RJ's thinking right now, like watching this movie when he gets to it, and it's like, yep. But I think that's like kind of the idea.
No, I think you're right. Like you bring up some interesting points, and like I guess. Like it's like we were saying with when you were talking about Mother, like, you know, sometimes a good movie is something that makes you think. Like sometimes you don't understand it, sometimes you don't agree with it, but as you said, you can kind of peg me now, and from a family upbringing of agricultural Catholic roots, you're damn right. I'm in that mindset where it's like, well, you got to work, like. You can't just be a bum. And and stuff like that. I was just like, I don't get it. Like I understand people who don't want to work, and like I understand people. Well, not even like don't want to work, but it's like you don't want to fit into that kind of thing. But I don't see myself as like I know it is those idyllic, like I don't know. Like what you were saying, like you do this, you do that, you have your family dinners, you pay your rent, and like I know that's like. A type, but I don't really.
It's not a guarantee, but it's like also like pretty safe bet. And like in a life of like uncertainty and like security, like we're kind of taught to like those are like the paramount things in. And that's like not like a North American thing necessarily either. That's like pretty like industrial world is based on these things. And I mean, there's a lot of creature comforts. There's like things you're like, you know, I just like to be able to like have a hot shower in the morning. I like to be able to just go take a shit in a toilet, and it's going to I hit this little thing and it just sweeps it away. I don't have to nice. I don't have to smell it for very long. I just like it goes away, and I don't know what happens after that, but it's someone else's problem. And as long as those pipes are kept clean, as long as I pay my heating bill and the water is kept warm, and I don't have to think about it. And it's one less thing you have to worry about is like, where's my bathroom? Like, you know, my food's not going to spoil. My fridge works. I have a fridge. I bought a fridge. But like those are all just like things that I don't know. There's things, and like there's an extreme. I don't know. I've read my Walden. I've thought about living in the woods.
I know. Like who hasn't had that idea once to buy a horse and just move to the mountains, stop bothering everybody. I know it's. I understand like where it comes from. It's just it pulled me out of it. I was like, I don't feel bad for you, you bum. I have the Ralph Klein approach, where it's
bums and creeps, chase them out.
Get a job, you bum. That's how he dealt with the unemployment in our province a long time ago. So
back in the 90s.
Yeah. What are we gonna do with the unemployed Premier Ralph Klein? Tell him to get a job. Like he did it. He solved the problem.
Going to homeless shelters and throwing money at them drunk. And getting reelected, because that's the place we're from.
He was truly the best of us. But anyways, so even though I wholeheartedly disagree with the lifestyle, because get a job, this movie in general, there are aspects I do like. I thought the intro was really cool, where they're like wiping the red stuff off of it. I thought that. Off the walls. I thought that all looked really cool. And then when the tree people scene happened, I was like, I don't understand this at all.
The swamp people, yes.
The swamp people.
Yeah, that's like the final 5 minutes too. Like it comes at you, and you're like, what the fuck? This is some sort of Wicker Man shit going down right now.
Yeah. Because it looks like they're stealing people. I was like, it was like the geek show in the last movie. I was like, I don't understand what's happening.
Okay, swamp people made more sense to me in some ways. Okay, so to step back, have you seen the movie Wendy and Lucy?
I don't think so.
The movie from Michelle Williams. What's her name? Her movie okay. Anyway, it's a movie about it's a girl and her dog, and they're like on the road. They're going to Alaska, and her car breaks down, and you're confronted with the reality of like what happens when you have no money to like fix your car, And but you have this dog, this really lovely, sweet dog, and she has to like make the decision of like, oh, do I like bring this dog with me in like my piece of shit life of like going on the road,
Yeah.
or do I do right by this dog and like just leave it? And like it's like her dog gets like picked up by the city, and it's like a brutal movie. Like it's a really good. It's just like a character
I don't
piece.
think I'd watch that.
No, but nothing bad happens to the dog. It's not one of those movies, but it's like very like affecting because it's like it's about a dog and her dog, and it's just like, oh, poor dog. But anyway, it's what's her name? Reichardt. Anyways, good move, good director. I like her stuff, and she had a movie just come out in the Criterion Collection. Certain Women with Laura Dern, because she's in everything. Cool. Speaking of which, this movie has chained up dogs. A couple those appear, and they're always barking. In yards.
Yeah, I wonder what they did what the film crew did to get those dogs to bark.
Oh, come on, dogs bark all the time.
Yeah, I know. I was just playing to the type.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I was gonna say there is stuff that I do like. There was one line I thought was really cool that I liked when she was talking to the sheep farmer, and they're like talking about all their problems, and he's like, well, we've all got things. It's just how it is. And I was like, yeah, man, everyone's got a problem, and this is yours. So I like that. I usually am big into the nonlinear elliptical style, as you said.
Yeah.
I didn't like some of the ways they presented it here, like the little. I'm going to use a word I used last time. The vignettes, where it's like you see when she's with the people, and then later it's almost like they're being interviewed by like a documentary Well,
like it's like the movie's like capturing a conversation they're having with like somebody else or whatever. Yeah, it's all offhand conversations.
I didn't mind it a couple times, but there were some times where I was like, ugh, because it's like sometimes it's really out of nowhere, where you'll see a scene of her walking down the street, and then I'll cut to a guy in a house, and he's like, yeah, she was smelly. And then it'll cut to a different scene.
There's a great quote that I liked a lot called, it's just a dirty girl with a backpack. And I'm like, what, did David Lynch write this?
Yeah. A dirty girl with a backpack appears, and dirty smelling hippies or bearded men. Dirty bearded men.
In a room.
Yeah. So I don't know. Like there were things I liked, but again, I don't know. I didn't love either of these. I don't know. I'm not going to watch either of them ever again. Because I hate hippies.
Yeah, you don't like women, and you don't like
that's not true.
No, you know this. Hear me out. You don't like women. You don't like female directors. They should be not allowed to make movies anymore. This is like no. It's all on record. You've said all these things, and everyone should just work for a living, and you should restrict freedom.
Yeah.
And you don't like swamp people.
I didn't say I don't like the swamp people. I said I don't understand the swamp people.
So anyway, the end of this movie comes like fairly quickly, and you're like, oh, she's just like come across this like village in somewhere in France, and then like she's seeing all these people hiding, and they're like closing up windows and like taking off, like they're like, oh shit, and you're like, what the hell's going on? And then these like dudes show up, and they're all like like Swamp Thing, and there's like a bunch of them, and they just start like attacking people playfully because it's like a fertility right thing, and I don't like who knows what. I mean, you're not supposed to know because you're supposed to be experiencing it like Mona is, because she's just like wandering into this town. You're like, what the hell is this? Because this community has its own like views of the world that it thinks are acceptable, even though it's like that doesn't make any sense. So why is this okay? And it's so she gets like drenched in water because of these like crazy people just dumping people and attacking them for fun. And then, that's like how she dies. She like escapes this town of like fertility rites going on, and then she like falls down into a ditch, hits her head, and she just kind of like turns over and goes to sleep and dies. And it's like this really depressing final shot of her just staring off into the great nothing, and we know how it ends because it's how the movie begins, and that's the life. And I don't know, it's the facts, it's existence.
Yep.
Because you know what? Even if you live like the comfortable, risk-free existence, we all wind up dead. And I don't know.
That's the truth.
I guess the whole idea of living on your own terms, determining whether or not I don't know what's doable for you, and then I guess like making that life for yourself. Thinking in terms of these types of movies, have you ever seen Into the Wild, Sean?
Yes.
Yeah. What did you think of that movie? Because that kid's a bum, but he's a boy. Yeah, so he's a guy, so you like him more. And it's directed by a man, so you like it more.
Eddie Vedder of Pearl Jam did the soundtrack to that movie, and I like that.
Yep.
But he is a bum, and he made a mistake, and he ate a berry he shouldn't have ate or whatever, and that's on him. Yeah. He deserved to die. So whatever. I don't like. See, that's what I mean. Like, I understand. I think his was a little different though. Like, because wasn't his like a journey of like discovery, not like I just don't want to do stuff. Because that's like what she was. She's like, I just don't care.
Yeah.
But wasn't Into the Wild, like, wasn't he trying to like find something, find himself?
It's the same difference.
I don't know. I feel like they're different.
One pause. It's because it's also based on an article by a man. All white men, RJ, and they are all. It's a story about a guy who's like more likable because he's like, oh, he's just like me, a college age kid who just like decides I'm going to drop out and I'm going to find America and find myself. This is a story that's like the flip side. It's like there's no pretext of that shit. It's just like, yep, I'm a teenage girl and I'm going to like I don't give a fuck. Society sucks. It's fucked. It's just it's shitty. It's not fair, and I'm going to drop out. And then I still have to deal with the male gazes because there's all these shots of her like wandering around, and there's all these guys always stop and they look and they take a look down, up and down, and she plays the game because it's a strategy, it's a survival strategy because she does the flirtatious looks back to get what she needs out of those gazes, like like a sandwich, and that's the thing she plays. It reminded me too though of like I had flashes back to Passion of Joan of Arc because there's like that whole story of like the reason why she was wearing like she was dressed like a man in soldier gear was because it was harder to like for men to like undress her to rape her while she's in prison. Right. And so there's like that thing where like she's like wearing this like unassuming kind of black leather jacket to like trying to like deflate the fact that people can look at her or look at her body, and like her hair's just down and stuff like that. Like she's just kind of like trying to move through life. And I mean the actress they cast, I mean, she's not this great beauty. She's not a Selena Gomez. She's not like some young thing that's nubile. The reason I bring up Selena Gomez is because there was some bullshit about her getting a fucking kidney last week, and now and I guess she's like in a Woody Allen movie. Surprise, surprise. Sure. Because if you want to be the stamp of approval on your nubile body, you're in a Woody Allen movie generally. Hello, Scarlett Johansson. Anyway, so this movie, like, it's actively against those things that we expect from movies. And, I mean, I don't know if, like, I wouldn't call it, like, a super enjoyable movie. Like, it's not like, wow, man, I can't wait to pop that in like I do, like, a Martin Scorsese movie or something like that. It's, like, it's like a real movie that isn't like necessarily a pleasure to watch, but I mean, I found it really interesting. It's awesomely shot. I really like the way this movie looks. There's this like really great thing that she has going out throughout the movie too, where it's like a right to left tracking shot with that like movie, and it's like, man, it's like kind of weird because it's like usually in like North American Western storytelling, you move left to right when you're progressing through a story. And this movie's like, it's always right to left. So it's kind of it's always back. So, I mean, I thought it was like it's a nice weird little touch that like, she does it enough where you're like, oh, it brings attention to itself. So I'm like, I guess because it's all set in the past, rather than, I don't know. I like this movie. I mean, I don't know if I'd be like super recommending it to people though. I mean, I think you have to be a certain type of person to get something out of this. Like, I don't know if I'd be like, hey, RJ, you should watch this movie. Because like watching it, I was like, I don't think RJ's going to like this movie a great deal.
Yeah. It has nothing to do with it being a female director. I just want to make that clear because you said that many times. I don't hate women, okay? All right? I don't like bums. That's it.
Wow. All right. So you're not much of a class warrior. They all just need to get jobs.
I told you, get a job, you bum.
Yeah.
It's like, who's going to hire that stinky guy? I'll hire you. You come over. I'll give you $1 to mow my lawn.
Or you'll be like a kid who's like, Mr. President, I want to mow the yard. And
goddamn right you let him.
And you'll fly him in, and then he'll come out. The president will be like, that's a good job you're doing there. That's
stiff him on the pay.
That's America.
Yeah. No, I don't know, man. It's like I said, I don't know. I don't relate to the story at all, and which it doesn't really matter. But the whole time I was like, you're getting offered so many good things. Just take it. Just take the sheep farm. They offered you like a house. All you had to do was plant some potatoes. Wouldn't be that bad.
That sounds like horrible.
Well, maybe to you, but like those guys are living in a sheep barn and they seemed okay.
Yeah, because that's what they think they have to do, I guess.
What would you rather do? Live in a trailer and plant potatoes, or die in the ditch after 3 people mug you?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Freedom or the road, or food and comfort.
It's all about compromise. Where do we compromise? Or in the throwback to another movie discussed, it's about when you decide to burn the house down.
There you go.
So RJ, who hates these movies? Got a couple here. Some choices. Talking about Cleo from 5 to 7. No real hate reviews.
Yeah.
These are some 2 stars. One from Dimitri. A bore of a film. It seems to be getting a lot of credit from people versed in French New Wave as innovative, existential, etc. But at the end of the day, it's essentially plotless and dull. Debbie Harry Cleo is hot and sometimes likable, but following her around Paris as she shops for hats and engages into similarly aimless activities for an hour and a half gets old pretty quickly. So fortunately, I'm glad Dimitri enjoyed looking at Cleo, and just like it's like Jennifer Lawrence being forced upon us and being told she's sexy. I'm like, yep, that's the priority of this movie that you're talking about, is when I want someone sexy. Gaze, dude, it's all around us, and it's something. That's one thing actually that I liked about. I thought it was like a nice, honest moment. I don't know if it totally won me over with Cleo from 5 to 7. Was the end of the movie where like Doctor rolls up and he's like, "Oh yeah, hey, we'll start on Monday. We'll see you next week." And he's like, "Whoa, I guess that means I have cancer." Like it's just like boom, and he's like, "Whatever. Not a big deal. We'll start treatment." And he drives off in his car. And then she's like, "Oh, I feel better. At least like I feel so much better now that I know," which is actually probably a true thing. Like once it's the not knowing that's way worse. The anticipation of like finding out a test is like way worse than like actually finding out what it is, because you have no power whatsoever over uncertainty. 2.5 stars from one RP Jones. Much like Breathless, this is a new wave film I can't seem to fully get behind. I usually don't have problems with shapeless narratives that follow their want, but something about the way the French did it in the 60s just doesn't keep me connected. Here, it's easier to point to high points: the disrupting opening, the session with the pianist, Cleo feeling the looks of passerbyers, her unexpected relationship, and lament the film not being able to keep the emotional low points as engrossing. That's not far off, I guess, from what I think. I mean, there's a lot of technical stuff. I think this movie does look good. But yeah,
that's what I was saying. Like, I like the first movie. I think the first one's pretty good. Like, I don't love it. I'm never gonna watch it again. And I don't dislike Vagabond either. I like it. I just, parts of it made me mad because take a shower, get a job. But no, like, yeah, I agree with like what that guy's saying. Like, I actually do like what I was saying. I think the opening of Cleo is wicked good. I just don't think it holds that for the whole movie.
Oh, so I had this is like completely unrelated to anything, but that tarot card scene when she was laying out the 9 cards, I was thinking like, Twin Peaks: The Return. It's 18 episodes. That's split in half, which that should like it definitely has like a feeling of being divided. That would correspond to 9 and 9. And there's like, I don't know. I posted about this a little bit. I'm like, Mark Frost seems like a type of guy that was into tarot, and I wonder if he like there's like a design aspect to like the using a tarot deck with the laying out of the series, that like he just like laid out cards and he went, "Yep, that's the structure we're going to go with." And he's like, that's all they did. And then David Lynch went and did whatever the fuck he wanted. But like there's like certain things where you're like, that's something all right. And like I would love to read like a real interview with Mark Frost, and I'm really looking forward to that book coming out at the end of October.
Yeah, me too. I can get you a deck of tarot if you want.
Oh, I've got one. You won't have to ask your mom for one.
She's got so many tarots, real cool ones too.
I think when I was looking up Twin Peaks and tarot, I did see that somebody put out a Twin Peaks themed tarot deck last year.
Nice.
Some Kickstarter thing. Who hates Vagabond other than RJ and poor people and women? Daniel Maddock, 2 stars. With a main character I found dislikable all the way through, Vagabond was a disappointing experience with a suffering of poor effort. I don't know what that means. Maybe an anti-hero would be a better suited intention, but there has to be something to commend her for as she goes around along the road. If I can't care while she's living, well then, you know. It often reminds me why I didn't find The Happening all that compelling either. Melodramatic music, staining an otherwise convincing shot of emotion or anguish. Shame. Such a shame.
I don't know.
That's the first time I'm pretty sure that The Happening has been referenced in terms of like these hate reviews. That's weird.
Yeah, that's a little weird. Can I give you a hot take here, man? When I watched The Happening, I didn't think it was that bad.
Yeah, I've yet to watch it.
But now my current feelings about Mr. M. Night are a little different from when they were back in that days.
Yeah,
I gave him a lot of credit for Signs and Unbreakable, and maybe I wouldn't anymore.
Well, I find M. Night unlikable.
Well, is that also because I send you his tweets so much?
Or as this fellow says, dislikable.
Dislikable. Yeah, this guy was a little harsher than I was.
Okay. And then finally, Ben DeBono, he gave this 2.5 stars. I didn't care for Vagabond much at all. It's not a well-made film. This and Cleo are more than enough to convince me that Agnes Varda is a very talented director, but it's one I didn't enjoy watching and find little in it to recommend. Which is strange to say it's not a well-made movie, but then say the director is very talented.
Yeah, that's a little conflicting.
The basic premise is solid enough. I like the concept of examining an unconventional character without either judgment or romanticism. The problem is that Mona is such an extraordinarily unlikable person that the film's approach toward her doesn't work. A film like this ought to challenge our preconceptions and biases. If you're predisposed to like this sort of character, you ought to come away seeing her flaws. If you're predisposed to dislike her, like RJ, you ought to come away with greater empathy and understanding.
No. That's not how stuff works.
That's like that's some basic bitch right there.
Yeah, that's not how things work.
That's why people hate Mother. In that regard, it fails. By the end of the film, I had almost no empathy for Mona. What happens to her is tragic, but it's a tragedy of her own making. Well, that's fucking tragedies. She routinely mistreats those who try to help her. There's little sense of why she ended up in her position other than simple selfishness. I don't have an issue with unlikable characters per se, but a story has to recognize them as unlikable. Here, the movie wants us to see Mona as a flawed but ultimately good character. I can't see her as anything but selfish and destructive toward herself and others. Because of that, the film does not work for me. Like, this is kind of like this to me is like kind of represents like the most typical view of this movie by people that would make me mad. Where it's just like, oh man, you just don't want to talk about movies in an interesting way other than like if it's got to be like right out of like Robert McKee's story, just like the most laid out typical storytelling. Everything has to be like, he has to follow these particular rules, otherwise it's not worth watching at all, and it doesn't work for me.
That's like one of the other guys we've read his bad reviews for on the show, where it was like, it's like a movie has to entertain. If it doesn't entertain, it's not a movie. And it's like, I am film for life. It's like, no, that's not how stuff works. Like, even though whoever this person was, this last review you read, like there's certain aspects of their review that I was like, yeah, I kind of feel the same way. But at the same time, there's a lot of stuff where it's like, well, no, that's not how stuff works. It's like, if you don't, what they said, it was like, if you don't feel bad for her, you should at the end, or if you do feel bad for her, you shouldn't at the end. It's like, that doesn't make any fucking sense. Like, what do you mean your opinion of her should change? Like, sometimes your opinions won't change. I don't know. It's silly. Silly.
I mean, yeah, it's like it's a risk to make a movie about a character that like it's like actively unlikable. Like they're like basically like, every time you're like, oh, I can kind of feel bad for her. Oh wait, no, she kind of brings this upon herself, and it kind of pushes people's empathy to an edge. And it's like people's degrees of empathy are going to vary, like, and it's going to get these reactions too. Anyway, yeah. So those are those two movies. Another doubleheader down.
Yep.
After the break, I don't know. We're gonna gaze at women creepily from alleys. They better be.
I'm gonna go down in the ditch.
They're gonna be sexy. They better be sexy. Otherwise, I'll be very mad and write letterbox reviews about it. And how they should be sexier because I'm a creep.
Chauvinist Duncan over here with his sexy ladies.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.